Hello.
Then there were two.
Everybody. Yeah, we made it to a Thursday. Welcome to the Huddle. A reminder, Rachel is out today, attending, unfortunately, a family funeral. But you have Sean and me. When I was a kid and my older sister was gone, my younger sister and I would basically just fight all day. So hopefully that does not happen here. Sean, how are things down in D.C.?
You left the toilet seat up, and I told Mom.
Sweetheart,
yesterday was a blessing. I'll tell you what, after all this frozen ice that has taken, layered over the snow, it finally started to melt yesterday in the 40s. And oh, what a breath of fresh air that was. Just getting rid of this hardened, messy snow. Yeah. So
now,
it's supposed
Sean,
to be 52 tomorrow or Saturday.
When will the flowers in the family room turn over for the season here behind you? And what is it? Hydrangeas coming back? What is the...
Good question. I think I am going to vote for something in between the hydrangeas. Maybe some Easter lilies or something. I don't know. I don't want to give it
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right, well, stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
All right. Well, an exciting day ahead today. We'll go through the day book, talk about the today's 5. For those who haven't seen it, I think Pam Bondi's here was one for the ages. We're going to talk about whether it was helpful, hurtful, maybe both. We're going to talk about the Democratic Party and the kind of a slight dilemma they have with their decorum. There's a line between confident and overconfident. Where are Democrats as we head in, particularly to the State of the Union? Meet me in Munich. The famed annual Munich Security Conference is coming up here. And we have a bunch of 2028 Dems going, including, I think, the first time Gavin Newsom and AOC are going to be in the same place, along with Gretchen Whitmer, Ruben Gallego, amongst others. So we'll talk about the challenges with that. Josh Shapiro and John Fetterman, the New York Times has an interesting story about their complicated relationship. So we're going to break that down, talk about when you run for president, why this could be a problem. And then social media and teens' mental health, a story in the Washington Post today about some tech companies collectively working together to try to monitor and potentially limit teens on social media. And so we'll talk about that. And so before we do that, let's go through the day book here quickly. Not as much going on today as we have had in the past. 9 a.m. here. Tom Homan is going to hold a press conference in Minnesota. Curious, what he has to say. Governor Walz spoke with both he and Susie Wiles yesterday. Perhaps an announcement of the drawdown being complete will occur, but stay tuned. We'll keep an eye on TV and the chat.
We've got you covered from all sides. We've got
exactly
on the ground.
Exactly. And then at 9 a.m. also, Todd Lyons, Rodney Scott, and I'm going to mispronounce the last name, Joseph Edlow, are going to testify before the Senate Homeland Security Committee. So that, obviously, they were in the House the other day. We'll see what they have to say over in the Senate. And then 1:30, Trump will make an announcement with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. Trump had an announcement earlier in the week about the climate, pulling out of some of the climate pact. So we'll see if perhaps there's more meat on the bone with that. And then busy policy afternoon, Sean, 3 o'clock. He has a policy meeting and then another one at 5:30. The man is busy. I don't know if we have any insight as to what those may be. Sean, open, closed press. What do we think?
I think one of them is open.
Okay.
That would be my guess.
Okay. And then, as we say, the Congress is supposed to adjourn this afternoon. There are a bunch of what they call CODELs, meaning kind of government-funded trips overseas and around, and people are anxious to get out of town. So we will see. And of course, yesterday, the SAFE Act passed the House. It now goes over to the Senate. Convenient time to get out of town, right, Sean?
Yeah, we'll talk about this when we get to Munich, because I think obviously DHS will come up, so we can talk about where this stands. I asked Senator Bill Haggerty yesterday on my show about this. I'll tell you about what I heard when we get to the Munich part.
All right. Well, first, we're going to just do a word from our sponsors. I'm going to go first here. CB Distillery. For those who haven't used it, if you're ready to start sleeping better, stressing less, just want to feel good again, CB Distillery. The first time I heard about them, actually, for those who don't know, I like to run. And after my first half marathon, it took me a few days to recover. And a lot of people that I know that I run with said, have you ever tried CB Distillery? It's very popular to try to help with recovery. Some people like to have a little alcohol, but that obviously can mess with hydration and have other side effects. But CB Distillery, if you want to try to, again, sleep better, stress less, very popular. A lot of people enjoy the products. Yep, there are different ways to use it. Sean there modeling it as only he.
That's the bomb. You just rub that on.
Ooh, boom. Yeah. Great Seinfeld about the bomb. So go to cbdistillery.com, use our code HUDDLE for 25% off. Again, that's cbdistillery.com. Use the code HUDDLE.
Yeah, look, and when you're getting ready to go to bed, you know what you want to do? Get it in your cozy earth pajamas.
Hello.
Listen, I know a lot of times we talk about products. I'm not kidding, guys. I got them on, the joggers on during the day, the pajamas on at night. I feel like a billboard for cozy earth. But I look forward to it. I'll throw them in the wash just to make sure I can wear them at night. You know, it is such a great product. Everything about them, the joggers, the pants, they're versatile. They've got something for every body at every time of the day, morning, noon, night. And I've told you before, I even sleep with a mask. I've had 100 masks over the last few years. The CB Distillery sleep mask, I can't say enough about. The thing is amazing. The towels are fantastic, but you will never go wrong. If you've got that hard to please person in your life, you're like, what do I get them? I've got the answer. Go to cozyearth.com, use our code HUDDLE for 20% off. That's cozyearth.com, use code HUDDLE, 20% off. But I'm telling you, whether it's yourself that you just want to give yourself a little something extra because the Trump economy is working for you, get yourself a little Cozy Earth. Or you got someone else. You got someone else coming up. Go to cozyearth.com, use code HUDDLE.
Well, I will say, when I ran government relations for H&R Block, we would ask people, what are you doing with your refund? So if you're getting a refund, as most Americans are, great thing to do. Go to Cozy Earth or CB.
Yeah, or you could just sign up for our go to you know, the DC Huddle and become a VIP member. So yeah, those are the two things. Don't you know? Plus, there could be a big enough refund that you can do both.
Well, we'll help you. We're not financial advisors. Don't take financial advice from us. But,
no, that's not advice. That's just sign up and do it. I'm not advising. I'm just telling.
All right, so let's jump in here. Let's start with Pam Bondi's hearing. We flagged it yesterday, Sean. I think Rachel's quote was, "It's going to be lit." I think hat tip to Rachel, who's not here. Well done. It was lit. I think this was one. Sean, I don't know about you. I was not watching it live, and then I started getting text messages. I looked on social media, and I was like, "Whoa, I'm going to tune in because this sounds like this is almost, you know." What was the old daytime talk show where they would throw chairs? What?
Like Maury Povich?
No, what was the one where was it Geraldo, where they would like throw chairs and it would
I think there were some chairs thrown on Maury Povich.
Yeah, I mean, basically it was everything but that yesterday. So Sean, let's just start. You know, we're a political show. You know, this was not the first time that Pam Bondi's kind of come in ready to, you know, throw some haymakers back. What was your take? I mean, what was your reaction? Was it helpful? Was it hurtful? You know,
so it's funny the way you frame this, because Jamie Raskin immediately starts going at it with Bondi, and he says to her, "I watched you in the Senate," right? Yep. This was all you needed to know. Once that happened, it was like, I saw the first movie. I'm not going to be part of the sequel. And yesterday was, if you are a Trump supporter, you love the fiery nature, the pushback of Pam Bondi. If you are a Democrat, you love the way that their folks went after her and tried to quote. It was, to me, this goes back to how I've described some of these hearings. It's a joke, right? The hearings are not an opportunity to actually learn anything from the witness. And that's why when we talk about depositions in the past, there's a reason that depositions occur versus a public hearing, because you're actually trying to get information. You're trying to get people to put a cogent timeline together or a recollection of events. Those things, these hearings are a joke. And I get the point of them to some extent, but like at one point, they were like, I'm going to ask you this. And she says, I'm going to answer the question I want to. Okay, that's fine. But like, it's a complete waste of time. I mean, like, each side got their social media clips, but I feel like at some point it's just a waste of time and energy.
But Sean, let me ask you this though. I mean, hearings have always had the performative side, that there's always, you go down the dais, particularly once you get past the first few people, it's hard to think of new questions. As you say, people now look for social media clips or whatever. But one of the things that struck me yesterday was I have not really seen a lot of administration officials in either party go back personally with like,
you're true.
You're terrible. You're a just
loser.
I mean, again, like Democrats did not do themselves any favors the way they talked to Bondi at times, speaking over her and kind of, I thought, really lacked respect. It went both ways. But if you're at the White House, do you worry a little bit that she got so hot going back at them that as you say, the base loved it. Our base loved what our side did. But those people in the middle might be looking at it and saying, I don't like this. Like, I just don't like this. Like,
let me ask you, let's just go down this rabbit hole for a second. Most Americans have jobs, and lives, and or family or friends or hobbies, and aren't like, what happened at the House Judiciary Committee today? So the people who are watching are the people partisans, who are political junkies, who are diehard MAGA or liberal supporters. So, I mean, I think sometimes we have to remember who's actually watching. And the reality is, I remember when I was like in college and I was politically active and people were like, get a life. Like, like there's a point at which normal people might see a clip or whatever, but they're following people on Instagram. They're following people that they associate with on X or whatever, Blue Sky. The point is that like, I don't think the average person cares. Like, they're like, and look, if you dial it back a day when Monica McIver from New Jersey went after Todd Lyons and said, are you going to be happy in hell or something? And, it's like, it just, it's not like no one's got clean hands on this. And some of the questions were obviously over the top. I get Pam got very personal. But at some point it's like, you're not going to just sit there and take it. When you're told to first of all, like, I think some of this stuff was unbelievably performative and also very accusatory. Like, you have this on your, it's like, really? Right. Like, I thought Pam did a good job at sometimes pointing back. You said nothing on Epstein for 4 years of Biden, and now suddenly you want me to be the one that carries the water for all of this? No.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing was, I'll say two things. I agree with you that the average person doesn't watch it, but I do think what is different today than, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago is now, like, if you just go on, and most people will go to Instagram or check whatever, most people are on some social app or they go to YouTube. The clips of that hearing, I heard from people, this is always kind of a little bit of my test, of people who don't follow politics closely day in and day out, who were like kind of laughing, saying, did you see this? Like, this was bananas. And they found it somewhat funny because it was so kind of off the rails. But I do wonder if yesterday does, kind of get picked up a little bit. But on the substance, one of the things I found fascinating yesterday, Sean, was a lot of the conservative media did not take that hearing and talk about it throughout the day. Like, when I looked at Fox, they were not talking about it. They were not showing this hearing, which I found a little bit interesting, because one of the things that came out that was picked up was Pam Bondi said there are active Epstein investigations going on at DOJ after Todd Blanche had said there aren't, which fed the whole, like, are they hiding something? What is going on? You think there's any, on the substance side, there'll be any kind of fallout from what happened yesterday? Because Epstein did, even, Massey went at her, and obviously he's off the reservation, but she got pressed and kind of was all over the place a little bit.
Yeah, at least on my side, I didn't pick up a lot of like, oh my gosh, this is where we're going. To the media side, I've asked some folks in television, and interestingly, I don't have an entire answer, but the thing that's fascinating to me is that they are and I don't mean this is a very personal, tragic story for the Guthrie's family, but we are a political show. And but like the people that I was talking to in the business are like, the Guthrie story is a lot more where people are at and what they're interested in.
Yeah.
And so, because I was intrigued by some of this, and you got to remember again, if you're Fox or News Nation or CNN, you have enough data to know where is our audience, what do they want to see, what are they tuning out on, and when. And a hearing where two sides are going at it. I mean, I'm not privy to the minute Wilson's, but they've got to know where their audience is and what's appealing and what's not. And my guess is, and also it's in retrospect, they're monitoring a hearing. You'll see news networks sometimes say, we're going to dip into this now, but you don't know when that explosive back and forth between her and Jamie Raskin is going to happen.
Well, so it'd be interesting to see. So I think we probably both agree it was helpful. Both sides helped themselves with their base, and probably neither side helped themselves with people in the middle who probably thought, Jesus.
The bigger question I have, Dan, is that, like, look, I was the comms director for 2 committees and 1 leadership office. Like, when I was the comms director at the budget committee, we would literally go down the dais and say, okay, Congressman Turrentine, here's your question. We're going to ask about this, because we wanted to script the hearing. The question I sort of find intriguing is this becoming the new model going forward, which is we're going to call someone in, they're going to yell at us, we'll yell back at them, and then we'll sort of see who gets more clips. Or is it, at some point, and I know not every committee does that, like Armed Services doesn't come in and say, General, where were you? I mean, like, it's not really how that works. But oversight, judiciary, there are certain committees that it's in their nature.
Well, and I think it's a good segue here, because you and I were texting last night about this story that came out about Democrats already. Hakeem Jeffries, at their weekly caucus meeting yesterday, has already begun talking to his members about the State of the Union. If you recall, last year, Trump's first, I forget what they call it. It's not the State of the Union. Yeah, kind of a. But Al Green famously got up there, was kicked out within, I think it was the first 10 minutes, going at Trump. You had people who, refused to stand at moments where I think it was totally inappropriate. The little boy who was recognized, and the person who got into West Point. But what's interesting about this, and it dovetails with the hearing, is Democrats, Sean, I think are growing more and more confident. They're more and more confident that they are likely going to win the House. There is some belief, like, perhaps we could win the Senate. There's a feeling that the winds are at our back on immigration, that the winds are at our back, perhaps on the economy. Again, that's all debatable. But I say this because yesterday I thought, at times watching that hearing, that there is almost an overconfidence building within the caucus, that there's a line between being, fired up and having strength and wanting to hold people accountable, and becoming totally disrespectful and looking like you are kind of out of control and angry. And I think with the State of the Union coming up, and there'll be more hearings, I think the party's going to have to, can Hakeem get the party in line? Or do people now, because I think you're right, say, look, I don't care what Hakeem thinks. I'm going to get on MS Now. I'm going to get more people to go to my website and sign up. Does Trump try to lay some traps for them? Do how would you, if you were on the other side and you see where their passion's going, how would you play this?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him throw a little chum in the water during the State of the Union on issues that he knows that they should. Like, we've talked about this before. There are issues that have been brought up by Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders that Trump has sort of co-opted to some degree. And does he try to get to say, oh, wow, look at that. You guys said that forever, and now you won't even acknowledge it. I mean, I could see a line or two in the State of the Union that do that. But you brought up 2 points that need to get underscored. One, I don't think anyone cares what Hakeem Jeffries says. I don't think they're like, you know what, guys, here's what he said in the caucus meeting today. We got to behave. Al Green didn't care last year. Joe Wilson, congressman from South Carolina, that famously yelled, "You lied." When you look at his fundraising that occurred in the aftermath, that the guy killed it. And I think that there is a reward system for becoming that sort of, that level of antics. So I don't know that anyone cares what he says. I'll be interested. I wouldn't be surprised if there is another stunt by a group of members of the Democratic caucus. They wear something. They have a pin that's so important these days on the left to wear. So I think there'll be something. But to your broader point, people know who Donald Trump is. And this is, again, where people miss the boat sometimes on Trump. He can do certain things. He's got like sort of Superman powers to do political things that no one else ever done before or gotten away with. No one else can just pull that off, though. And that's where, again, I think they misread sometimes the political landscape. They're like, oh, well, Trump was not, did this, so I can do it too. And it doesn't transcend every politician. So I would, if I were the Democratic Party, be very careful about how far I let my, condone any of this ridiculousness, because people are conditioned to who Donald Trump is as a person, as a politician, and the things that he says and does because of his track record and his record of results. Not everyone else can pull that off. In fact, I would argue no one else can pull that off. And so that's a big, big problem for the Democrats if they think they can just come in and try to maybe push the envelope too far.
Well, and I think an interesting thing too for Democrats that is getting lost as the more and more of them are cursing, more and more of them are kind of, as you say, adopting some of Trump's more aggressive tactics. That is the side that a lot of swing voters don't like of Trump. Now, as you say, it's baked in. They kind of grudgingly accept it. His base loves it. But part of what kind of baffles me is you see these voters who will like hold their nose and say, all right, I voted for Trump because of, he's going to close the southern border or he's going to make the economy better. But God, I wish he would not do this. And so when you see Democrats doing this, it does make me shake my head. For those who don't know, Jeffrey's advice was, if you're really that angry and you can't control yourself, don't show up, which will be interesting. I think, Sean, what do we think? Over, under, maybe 10 don't show?
Well, I think I could easily see well over 10 Dems not showing. The point, though, is that one of the dirty little secrets about the State of the Union is it's like a Hollywood show. There's fillers. Yeah. So there's never going to be an empty seat. They'll send someone down, some intern or page, to sit in the seat. So like but it'd be
a bad look, though. I think if this is where we go, that the other party doesn't show up, I just think to me, his other option was just sit on your hands, right? Yeah. You don't have anything nice to say. Just be quiet. To me, be respectful. No one's
gonna know. To be honest with you, I don't. If I remember, I'd watch it in my office where you can sit in the, turn the volume up, throw things at the TV if you like. But like sitting, you have to get there early. Like I just wouldn't. I don't know why this is such a tough call. I wouldn't go if I were them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, all right.
Well, I don't. No one's taking attendance. They, yes, AOC doesn't show. They'll probably notice. But I don't think it matters. I don't think anyone cares. I think she probably scores some points or anyone like that. So to me, this is, again, is a pomp and circumstance kind of thing. And I don't think that they should show if they don't want to go. Yeah. I also think here's the one thing that I would, and I don't think that Trump will do it while Johnson is the speaker, but mark the tape today. Dems take back Congress. I think he does the State of the Union somewhere else.
The ballroom?
Anywhere. Like, remember, it used to get sent by mail. This is not like so, I just think that he does a State of the Union somewhere, in Philadelphia.
Bucks County, Pennsylvania, whatever. That'd be clever. That would be. I
would. I think it would be fascinating because I think you turn it into a big event.
Take it on the road.
Yep.
Go imagine if that was your town and, the State of the Union came to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and, you got. Yeah, that's smart. All right, clip it. Remember where you heard it first. So speaking of AOC, let's go on to the next one here. So we've mentioned a few times this week, kind of in regards to other stuff. Every year there is this famous national security conference in Munich, Germany. It is often attended by American officials. People may recall last year, J.D. Vance went and gave the kind of what was, I think, really a historic speech that at the time did not get as much attention, in which he basically said to Europe, it's time for you to grow up and take responsibility more, not only for your own collective security in your neighborhood, but you need to clean your politics up and not kind of try to run these right-wing parties out. You need to let this all breathe. Obviously, on my side of the aisle, people, they raised their eyebrows considering Trump was going to the Middle East to say, we don't want to talk about what you're doing, stuff. But back to this. So it's coming up this year or this week. It was announced here that Gavin Newsom, AOC, Gretchen Whitmer, Ruben Gallego are going to go. Sean, this is obviously a little bit of a high wire act. When you're in the opposition, you're obviously thinking of running for president. Each of those people are. This is a chance to go build relationships, kind of begin to get a little bit of the halo of gravitas of being in a serious setting. But there's also risk because there's only one president, right? You may not like him, but there is one president. He sets the policy. You don't want to be out there undercutting him and telling, other countries and allies that, hey, we're going to go in a different direction and don't listen to, the president. Don't do this. Sean, do you think any of them give a big speech? Do you think they just quietly work the halls? If you were advising someone, you're going to this conference, what would be your advice about how to play it?
Well, I think it depends on who it is. I think someone like Newsom that's clearly eyeing the presidency is a sitting governor, therefore has, I don't know that you can actually get on the agenda as a sitting,
you'd be in the hallways. Yep.
But you could always do an event on the sidelines. I think that having something to say about allies and friendship or something like that might not be a bad idea. Again, there's a line and you can walk pretty darn close up to it, if not right over it. But there's plenty that you can do and say, and I get it. But I actually think that, as I said earlier, we kind of blending this into, we're 24 hours out as of midnight tonight from DHS shutting down. I had Bill Hagerty on my show yesterday, junior senator from Tennessee. He's an appropriator. There is no sign, nothing, no activity. There will be a shutdown. There is the processes are not in place right now to actually even have a vote to sustain a short-term, deal. So unless you see activity, and the reason I bring this up is that it's who you are matters. It's almost like a free shot on goal. If you're Gavin, you're a lame duck governor of California. Who cares? Go. If you're AOC, do you want to be over there when you might have a vote? So I would, this goes back to a couple things. One, if I were, and I'm trying to remember who the whip is in, it's not still Cornyn, is it? Barrasso, on the Senate side and on the House side, I would have a very strong list of who's going to be in town and out of town. Because there's the going over to Munich piece and for the Dems, but then there's the Republican side. They got to be very, very careful of this. Yeah. And also, as we talked about the optics of this, being over there when the government is shut down, on a homeland security front. When I asked Hagerty this, he was very clear. He said, we can't leave town. Yeah. So, this is going to be an issue. And I'll tell you, the funny part is, I know some people are reporting that Congress is leaving town as if it's a fait accompli. The look will be horrible if you go out of town, but then go somewhere else, hold a fundraiser, you're out of the country. I mean, honestly, that is not a good look for any politician while the security of the nation is in the balance.
And look, for those who don't know, this is a very popular time to raise money for campaigns, both sides of the aisle. There are trips planned all over the place. I want to go back quickly to Munich, though, because I'm fascinated by AOC's attendance. We associate her, Bernie Sanders, with the kind of progressive domestic policy, minimum wage, taxes. You don't think... Yeah. You don't think much these days about foreign policy, about national security. And, the same thing a little bit with Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer. To me, I'm fascinated about how AOC is received over there. What is it that she's trying to accomplish? Does she want to be photographed? Does she want to be seen out there, mixing it up? And what is it that she says? She hasn't talked a lot. I think today, Sean, we probably would both agree when we think of what's going to be, on the agenda in 27 and 28, probably affordability, probably the economy still, AI kind of things that are all politics is local. But it's always a kind of commander-in-chief threshold that you have to cross.
But that's the point. This is a box to check, right? Yeah. None of them have strong foreign policy credentials at all. Like Gavin's been, there's nothing that I'm sure he's taken a trade trip here and there as governor of California. AOC's idea of foreign travel is going, to Staten Island. That was good. So I say all that because I think for them, this is the ability to have a talking point. I was at the Munich Security Conference and I brought this up, but I also think they're playing by old rules, which is that like back in the day, that was something that every president would get asked, like, what are you going to do with our allies and relationships? And I don't know that people care as much about, it's just not been top of mind. And I think it was never that top of mind. I think the media made it an issue, but I think this is the way to check a box. Like I met with the prime minister of blah, blah, blah. And I can tell you that, it's a way for them to have a talking point in their speeches to brush up on their bona fides.
Yeah. Well, speaking of 2028, we'll move on here to the next one. So New York Times today has a story that this has been in other stories over the last year. You also have the both Shapiro and Fetterman have released books recently. I bought both of them here and in the process of reading them. But Josh Shapiro running for re-election for governor. Let's pull up here Polymarkets when we talk about who is the favorite on the Democratic side right now. You see Gavin Newsom, 27% has come down a little bit in the last month. But you have AOC there, Jon Ossoff, and then Josh Shapiro, who's kind of been, out there as a potential serious candidate. And his senior senator, John Fetterman, loved by, some, hated by others. They don't like each other. They have a very complicated history as two kind of Fetterman from the Pittsburgh area, Shapiro from the Philadelphia area, kind of rising within Democratic politics. Sounds like Fetterman doesn't love that Shapiro is the one talked about for the presidency and as the kind of star of the state. But this New York Times story kind of, is reminding people, Sean, it's hard to run for president when you have, other prominent officials in your state taking shots at you, saying that you're ambitious, saying that, you're a phony on some of these issues, that your finger is in the wind. My first thought was, my God, if I were Whitmer or somebody, I'd be trying to get Fetterman to endorse me. I mean, what a shot at Shapiro to say one of the most popular members of your state delegation does not like you.
Yeah.
What is your take on
so
this?
There's two things that I think are really interesting on that Polymarket, right? Two things on that chart jump out at me. Number one, who's not on that? No Kamala, no Whitmer, no Buttigieg.
Yeah.
Right. That's number one. No Bashir. Okay. And then here's the other kicker. Gavin Newsom is like heads and tails above everybody else. Think about that. Josh Shapiro, who we're having a serious conversation about his prospects, he's putting a book out there, as you mentioned, at 5.2, below Jon Ossoff. There are people that think about what that says. Like I like when you look at a market like that, right? People believe that there's a better chance of Jon Ossoff, who's running for re-election in the Senate in Georgia and virtually unknown, has a better chance. That says something to me about Shapiro. He's got a lot of problems in his backyard that he needs to fix. And so that says about where I think the field is in general. But the point that you're bringing up, I think, was really interesting because as you and I kind of talked before the show, there's to me a through line going on here, that relationships matter, right? So if you're Shapiro, having to worry about Fetterman sniping at you is something that you can fix. You call him, guys, he was the lieutenant governor before you were there's a way that you can say, hey, look, we've had our differences in the past, but you're doing a great job as senator. Right. I really like you. And try to get that, at least take the temperature down, number one. But this is also goes on. Yesterday, there's a vote on tariffs in the House in Canada. And you and I, we talked about this yesterday. We all were trying to guess the over under. It ended up being 6, right? But think about that 6. You had Kevin Kiley in California, who's, I don't know that he'll ultimately run for re-election or not, but if he does, it's going to be a very tough district. So that he needs couple votes against Trump to show that he's independent in a Democratic-leaning district. You've got Don Bacon not running for re-election. You've got Tom Massey, who's full on war with him. Who's the other one that's not running? There's another one not running for re-election. I mean, it's not, but like going after when you are, there is a story that we were texting around yesterday. There's a congressman in Florida, who is likely, by all accounts, again, hopefully not, saying, I'm going to announce I'm leaving Congress, a Republican congressman from Tallahassee. If he were to resign today, the House goes into absolute chaos. Okay, now, there's rumors that he has some health issues, potentially. I don't know the answer, so I'm not, but I'm just saying, if he doesn't wait until Marjorie Taylor Greene's successor is chosen, it's a dead tie. Yeah. Like Johnson's, the majority is in peril. Okay. The reason I say all this is because you guys, they've gotten Massey into a place where Massey is on the record yesterday saying, I have no reason to vote with you. None. And the same thing that goes to what you're talking about with Shapiro and Fetterman. It's like, when you fix these things, like these are ways to get this, there are things that you can fix or at least, mitigate. So I just think that politics is about relationships at its core. And, we talked about, we talked about in the past people who know how to play this a little better, or how Whitmer played Trump and had this, tried to make sure that the people of Michigan knew that she would play ball when necessary, et cetera, et cetera. But like the idea that these guys aren't thinking of their political, like long-term stuff. Like if I were Johnson, I'd sit down with Massey or get the White House too. If I were Shapiro, I'd sit down with Fetterman. It may not ameliorate everything, but at the end of the day, you got to at least try.
And that's the thing that I just keep finding fascinating about Shapiro is I go back to that I think it was the Atlantic story. I think it was Tim Alberta. That was just about all the people in the state, in the Democratic Party, that don't like Shapiro. And the Fetterman thing, again, is not new news. But to your point, when Trump defeated DeSantis, he gave him a month to cool off, and then he went and played golf with him. And obviously DeSantis knew he needed to make amends a little bit. But I've never seen someone run successfully for president with so many people in their home state not liking them. And it just says something to me.
You're not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
By the way, it reveals to me something that's fascinating, because one of the
character issue.
Things that, exactly. Yep. Because one of the things that I've never met Josh Shapiro in my life, but I'll tell you what I think. My impression is the guy's very arrogant. Yep. And he's cocky, and he won't believe. He's one of these guys that reads the news and says, that's just not true. That's not who I am. I mean, these people are wrong. Like, he is a denier about his own traits. And that's a problem if you want to run for a higher office, is that not understanding, so I'm just telling you, I think that, like, to me, he doesn't have the mettle of what it takes to run because he can't see his own flaws. Well,
and what's fascinating is most people, if you had to say who is the leader in the moderate lane, right? You have Newsom and AOC and others in the kind of progressive wing, but assuming there will be a kind of moderate lane, it's so fascinating that Shapiro seems to be so kind of a mile wide and an inch deep. There's just so many question marks out there about him. And if it's not him, then, who is it? A Whitmer? Is it Rahm? Is it a Brashear? Anyway, to be continued, but it is a fascinating kind of subtext to Shapiro's,
let me just, I'll end it by, and I know we need to move on, but I'll just say, this is the thing that's so fascinating to me about this, is that what you described, it's like, it's right there in front of everyone, like massive gaping hole in this primary for somebody to drive through. And they're all sitting back like, wow, look at the hole.
Yeah,
like, no one's going to get in their car and drive through it. They're basically like staring at the hole and saying, look at the size of that hole that we could get in and drive through, but we're not.
Well, and what's fascinating too, Sean, the views of Vance being formidable are getting less and less in the Democratic Party. They may be wrong, but the feeling is that Vance has not helped himself in the last 6 months. Go back to March, Democrats were like, cheapers, he's a machine. So to your point, there's this big hole and people are feeling more confident, but we will see.
Well, by the way, one other thing that I'll just give you some insight. JD is going to be raising, he's got a huge fundraiser next week that'll be announced soon. He is on it. The ability for him to stockpile money, goodwill. Yeah. He is literally going to have multiple laps around the track, before Democrats settle on a nominee. And in terms of data and financing, that will never be that is something that will be a huge X factor in the next race.
Yeah, he may have $1 billion by the end of 27, which would be amazing if he does. That's just would be amazing. So speaking of lots of money, social media companies. There's a segue. John, we've talked about the kind of power anyone with kids, particularly tweens or teens, the phone, having access to social media. Your friends on there, what they see, the kind of sexualization and other things that are so prevalent. And there's been more and more talk about, on a community level amongst parents about, school districts, what can they do to try to limit teen use, to try to preserve their mental health at a fragile time when they're going through puberty and other things. And you flagged, in our group chat, this story in the Washington Post about, I think it's Meta, Snapchat, and someone else agreeing to some, third-party independent group. What you've talked about this for a while. You were the first to bring this up, over a year and a half ago. What was your take on this story and this topic going forward here?
I think that this is like they're seeing the writing on the wall, which is, hey, people are coming after us. They're threatening our business model. So school districts are banning social media, massive movement that a lot of people like Jonathan Haidt have led to talk about the dangers of social media before 15, 16 years old. Parents getting more and more concerned. I've said that I cannot believe more politicians. Rahm has done a great job on the Dem side.
Yeah.
I can't believe, like, if I were JD, this is another issue. He's got small kids. He's been very clear that he doesn't have, they don't do screen time in the Vance household. Brilliant move, right? But I think he should talk about it more. Him and the second lady, like, they're dealing with this. This is an issue that is completely identifiable to a lot of Americans who are struggling with how to deal with, kids that are begging for phones or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. But this is one of those issues that we are going to look back on in 10 and 15 years and wonder why we didn't stop it when we knew it was how dangerous it was. I think these social media companies are going to become the new pharma. Like, they're just spreading money everywhere, as you noted. I mean, they have more money than they know what to do with. And the idea is, go out, buy up everything, spread some money. But then, to your point, they're in the middle of this massive lawsuit right now. And I think that they are trying to find ways out, which is, what can we agree to that will show that we're there and maybe nip this in the bud. But I again, my personal take on this is that this is them once again just entirely concerned about their bottom line and saying, what's the smartest thing we do now before we get really screwed legally or legislatively down the road.
Yeah, I always, find when these companies agree to work with third parties on monitoring, there's no accountability and action forcing mechanism in that, right? And what you're trying to do when you do this is to get ahead of government regulation, right, to say, oh, look, we'll self-report. But by the way, if we don't, or we don't follow the guidelines, oops, shame on us, we'll apologize. But I am with you. I do think in 2028, you are going to hear more talk about this, about banning social media up until a certain age, just because of the corrosive nature of what it does to teenagers and tweens at that age. We see it in our house all the time, and it's a constant battle to teach kids about what's real and what's not, and how to feel confident about themselves. And it is a real issue that I think we will hear more and more about. And as you say, JD, I hadn't thought about it from that angle, but for JD Vance with young kids, what an authentic, way to lead a national dialogue, to say we are battling this in our own house, or will be very soon. His kids aren't quite.
I mean, to me, somebody's going to grab this. Yeah. I mean, and Rahm has tried, and I will give him credit for raising the issue, but I think that if I were someone on the Republican side, I would make a huge deal of this, because it literally is something that transcends politics. Mothers, fathers, everybody who is in a household deals with this, who has kids. So I think that's where we're at.
All right. Let's see. We'll take some questions here. Let's see. First one up, Curious Observer. After yesterday's congressional hearing, in your opinion, has Bondi moved to the front line of people who will leave the administration before his, meaning Trump's, term is up? I think we actually have a Polymarket on what Polymarket think, who they think may be. Let's see, we have Howard Lutnick is at the top here. 25% of people think it'd be Lutnick, followed by Bondi at 18%. And then actually fascinating, none before 2027. I assume that the Lutnick is in because of the stuff about Epstein, but I'll just say, I mean, Sean, I do wonder if the White House yesterday, when she got back, they, in private, were like, hey, that was a little too much.
Oh, I don't. In fact, I would argue quite the opposite.
You think Trump
high-fived?
You think Trump was like, that girl?
But I also think that Polymarket chart is so fascinating that if you think about, if you had asked this question 6 months ago, I'd love to go back and see who it thought. But like, it's no one's out in front. Like, think about that. Even that to me says that, and number three, as you noted, there's enough people. Look at that. Enough people are willing to say number three, none before 2027. Right.
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, that's
talk. But think about that. This is people sort of willing to, put their money where their mouth is, and they're saying, and there's no partisan breakdown here, but people are like, hey, if I'm going to put my money, I obviously want to make money. I mean, like that's where the thought process is right now. Lutnick definitely out in front because I think obviously the Epstein file stuff. Plus, if you read these stories, I think that Howard's ruffled a bunch of the way he operates sometimes isn't within the guardrails. He's an outsider that I don't think is interested in PowerPoint presentations and kumbaya sessions. But beyond that, look at that. I mean, and for all the talk about ICE and all this, Nome at ostensibly tied for third. I think that shows to me a lot of stability in the cabinet. And like I said, my guess is that if you had asked this question last week, Lutnick would have been down at 8 or 9. I don't. Well, actually, we can tell, can't we?
Yeah, I'd be Sean. Let me ask you on why you look at this. You think any either cabinet official, or I'll just call them senior staff, and don't we won't go through who defines that. You think anyone leaves before November? Do you think it's likely that the Trump team, which would be a testament to Trump and Susie and co. You think no one leaves before November? Or do you think somebody, for whatever reason, says, I'm going to slide out and as you flagged, get somebody else confirmed before November?
Well, I don't think before November. Remember, the new Congress gets sworn in on January 5th. So I think that like maybe November 8th or something. And because I think you're going to have that come to Jesus where most chiefs of staff have it with the cabinet and they say, all right, guys, if you're going, you go now. If you don't go, you're sticking around. So my guess is, and the thing that you have to really remember is that for a lot of these folks, take Howard Lutnick. The guy ran Cantor Fitzgerald, as you know. Like he's got plenty of money. Like they're not doing this because they need some springboard into the private. I mean, like they've all done very well for themselves. They've all made, they've all made plenty of money. So I don't think they didn't go through this to springboard out and become something.
Yeah, good point.
So
very good point.
I think that there's a level of like, I knew what I was getting into. And so far, nobody's on the chopping block in a real way. I can see a lot of these folks staying the full time. And as I said, the election of the Senate will tell you everything about where things come down and who's staying and who's going, because there's just some people like the thing that's real about this job. And even during Bush, I was the assistant U.S. trade rep, which is, 3 rungs down. And it's a grind. You're on the road, you're traveling, and you're on at beck and call of everybody in the White House all the time. So there's a grind that takes place on your lifestyle that I think some people are like, hey, I didn't realize this. But you think about a guy like Doug Burgum, like he was a governor. He knows what it's like to work hard. He's made a ton of money. I think he enjoys the job. It looks like he's doing great stuff, or Chris Wright at it. I mean, like, so I don't see anyone leaving unless they just want to.
But, what's interesting too, thinking about this, unlike a lot of other cabinets recently, a lot of these guys and women are wealthy. A lot of them did buy, like Howard Lutnick bought Brett Baer's house. I mean, it was it was the largest residential real estate purchase behind Jeff Bezos. Like, they've planted roots. A lot of them have moved their families to Washington. Like, to your point, they're all in. Like, they are part of the social fabric. They're going to, events. Some of them have joined country clubs. Like, they are, you're right. I think a lot of them probably will stay unless, fired.
Yeah.
All right, let's take another one here. All right, from Haley, White House Religious Liberty Commission. What is it and why was a misinformed and borderline anti-Semitic woman chosen to represent the Trump administration? How big of a problem is this for the right in 2016?
Right. Dan, I'm just gonna challenge you here. If you could name the person that Haley is referencing, I'll send you a Huddle polo.
I was hoping that Sean knew what this was so he could address it. Haley, I have to be honest. Mr. Spicer may be right. I do not know who this is and what the person, the woman you're saying, background is.
So I'll give you the answer.
Yes.
There was a meeting of the White House Liberty Commission where there was a discussion about anti-Semitism. And Carrie Prajean Bowler, I believe is her married last name. You may recall her 2009 Miss California, was sort of got in trouble in the media for talking about marriage between a man and a woman. And it was not very quote unquote cool at the time. And she got killed by the left. And so anyway, I can't say, Haley, that I followed the entire workings of the commission. But they had this hearing, and there was a big discussion about Candace Owens and whether Candace Owens has crossed the line on anti-Semitic language. And my understanding, and again, just to be clear, Haley, I apologize if I get some of this wrong because I can't say that I am, but I know enough to be dangerous, is that Carrie was arguing strenuously that nothing that Candace has said was anti-Semitic. And therefore, and at the end, they finally decided they would remove the commission is headed by Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Yeah. And he had decided, I guess, and I don't even understand if there was a vote or whatever, but they said that she's got to be off the commission now because she was arguing in favor of anti-Semitism. There's a whole big thing on the right about Candace and some of the stuff that she has said and conspiracy theories that she has promoted with respect to Charlie Kirk. And it's a very deeply held, there's a bunch of people on both sides. I've tried to keep an eye on this, but I can't say I'm an expert, Haley, but that's, I don't think it's a problem, Haley, and I'll tell you why. And maybe I'm wrong on this, but I will say that I think I do a pretty decent job of monitoring a lot of this stuff. And this was normally I'll get flooded by people who be like, how, you got to keep an eye on this. You got to watch this. This is one that I found. And normally if I'm not getting flooded, then it says something. So I think there are people that I have unequivocally know that a lot of people are huge Candace supporters. She has a huge audience. You can tell by the ranking of her podcast and her shows. I just don't think that this is one of those issues that is saying you're with us or you're against us, right? And we talked about this before in a lot of issues in politics. You can believe strongly on one side or another of an issue, but does that mean that you're jumping off the team? Probably not. And I think this is one of those issues where there's people who are strongly held on both sides, but aren't willing to say, therefore, I'm not voting MAGA anymore. I'm not supporting the president.
I think the issue is, and we've talked about this a little bit here. I think Sean is right today. But I think in 27 and 28, this issue is going to dog J.D. Vance because to Sean's point, he's going to try to straddle both, right? You're going to try to keep both in the tent. You want the energy, you want the base, you want the social media kind of hive on your team at the other team. But I do think it is likely because I think JD's going to face somebody or some people are going to challenge him that somebody, whether it's Ted Cruz, who's kind of trying to go there, is going to say, you have to choose. What's his name? Ben Shapiro said at turning point. You have to choose. And, Newsom kind of tried to say, like, I'm not getting involved. But I do wonder how long he can remain straddling this.
So there's a couple of people who are taking issue, I think, of my analysis. I'm unclear as to what aspect of it. Like, is it that it's not going to rise to the top issue and that Dan's right? Or is it that, like, I'm not reading the sort of Carrie Prejean, Candace analysis? Like, I'm trying to figure out what part I'm off on. So Bumps and others, tell me where I'm missing this, because I think that that's a fairly solid analysis of where the situation is, at least in terms of. But again, I'm always
as people are giving Sean feedback here in the chat. Always dangerous to read the chat. Why don't we bring up one more question, Sean? Yeah. You can look at what they're saying, and then we can.
This is
and then we can come back to this. All right, Sean and Dan, can you give your thoughts on the El Paso airport closure? What do you think the reason was for it closing, and was there miscommunication between DOD and the FAA? I will say I find this story just kind of wild, because the New York Times has a story this morning that the reason it closed was not that Mexican drones were coming over and a threat to the airport, but that ICE is testing a drone, kind of a technology that the Department of Defense has to shoot down drones and other things as part of immigration enforcement, and that the FAA did not feel confident that this technology they were testing would not endanger commercial airlines. Sean, to me, look, there's always been a history of the government not being truthful when stuff like this happens. It's a bipartisan issue. But for an administration that is beginning to have a little bit of a problem with when it comes to immigration and ICE, and it was not a great look yesterday. To me, I would love, this is where a congressional hearing ought to happen, to say, like, guys, what the heck happened? Like, this can't happen again. You have a major city's airport being announced, at least for 10 days. We're closing it.
Yeah. So look, I will say this, a couple things at the outset. I have no inside information or intelligence on this at all. So everything I say is just complete. I want to make sure that no one accuses me of. That being said, I have been in the room enough times at the very highest levels when situations of this nature have come up. And what was interesting to me was a preemptive closure for 10 days, right? This wasn't, if you have an ongoing threat, you don't limit it. You don't go, okay, the threat's going to be gone in 5 days or 6 days or 10 days. There was something that made them do it, right? Because why would, if you have an ongoing threat, let's say that drones are a big issue and why would you say we're going to be done in, like, what do you guys think? Can we wrap this thing up in 10 days? We gotta get to a Galentine's Day party. Like, it didn't, there's something that didn't add up about how it went down. Okay. Number two, suddenly the day after, it's like, all gone. Like, I think the question that John is asking is really interesting, though, because this is where government needs to talk. So you got FAA/DOT, Department of Transportation, and DOD. And what are like, usually there's a coordinating piece, like, hey, we need to do this. How it went down again is what it should be setting off alarm bells, in my opinion, because it didn't add up. You don't have a finite end to an ongoing threat. And if you do, the idea to say, okay, so you guys are going to get all this done in 10 days and you knew that and it made sense. There's just something that didn't make sense. And then to suddenly lift it like that, again, calls into question, well, if you could lift it that quickly, why would you have put what they call a NOTAM out for 10 days like that? Because remember, this isn't as easy as just like, okay, go back. Like, they basically sent a note out to say, hey, we're closing an airport. So Southwest, United, American, whatever, you guys stop flying here for 10 days. Stop flying here.
Immediately, now.
Immediately.
Yeah.
So you got to reroute all these planes. And then the next morning, they're like, changed our mind. Come on down. Like, it just, you don't do that. And so there's something here. I don't know. And I will tell you again, having been at very high levels of some very big issues that have never come out to this day, I don't know that you'll ever know.
So fascinating. So fascinating. Well, it's never dull these days. Sean, what do you have? It's Thursday, the panel.
The
Who
panel
do
is
we
here.
have? Yeah, who do we have tonight?
It's going to be awesome. Lindsay Keith, my old colleague at Newsmax, is here. We're going to have fun, and this is going to be great. So, and then, by the way, tomorrow on the show, I'll just give you guys a quick tease. Savannah Chrisley you may know her from Chrisley Knows Best, the reality show. She got her parents' party. She's going to co-host The View. So I bumped into her the other night, and she's like, "Yeah, I will. I'd love to come on the show." And we're going to talk about the pardon process and what it was like, but then also like why is she going on The View? They said some really nasty stuff about her. So we're going to break down a lot of the big issues tonight on the DHS, ICE, the hearings with the panel, and we'll go from there.
All right. Sounds exciting. Rachel is planning to be back tomorrow. So you'll have all of us. Of course, Friday, we'll have winners and losers and what we are watching for. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you guys tomorrow at 8:30. Have a good one.